Hey, it might work this time around. So, um, I thought this field day that we just had was one of the better field days that I can think of. Um, the, the propagation was pretty darn good. I kind of liked the new area that we were in. I wasn't sure how that was going to work, but we'll talk more about that. We did pretty darn good as far as knocking down contacts and stuff like that. And we had a lot of fun, and it also seemed like we had an awful lot of good outreach there. And so I'll get into some of those topics a little bit later here. So this year we were at Avery Park at the Fireside Shelter. We had 8 stations that we had kind of set up. We ran a 7 alpha, which means transmitters out there that we could run simultaneously. And the alpha means that we're more than 3 people out there making everything working. And then the other nice part is that we were using an N3FJP for our logging program. And I I really screwed up in that I read instructions on how to end up running this thing across the network. And normally we used a TCP IP connection, and they suggested not doing that using file sharing. So anyway, that file sharing didn't work out all that great at the very beginning. So it took a while for us to put it together and make it work correctly. And then I still don't like it because if you drop out of that file sharing, then you drop back into logging on individual PCs. So this is what kind of the grounds look like. That's the big old fat sign there. And I'll tell you what, I kind of this is earlier in the year. You can tell that trees in the background are just now budding out. And so this is when I was first surveying the area to be able to use it for our event. But one of the things I really liked, and that's that shelter there, that covered area where we could get out of the sun. We had 2 great big humongous picnic tables there. We could run operations on one side, and the other operations, we had plenty of room there to spread out our food and also to sit down and eat the wonderful eatings that we had. So I thought all in all, it worked out pretty good. I was a little bit concerned about it, especially with those trees in the background. If you see those trees in the background, we're used to Willamette Park where we have pneumatic tennis ball launchers that we can get our lines up and over the trees there. But these trees here are just a little on the tall side. They're upwards to 120 to 150 feet air up in the air. And generally, most of our tennis ball launchers are only good for about 100 feet. But we learned to be able to hook some of those lower branches. And it's amazing enough, we got some of our antennas up to some really staggering elevations up there. So this is good old Scott banging away on the key, doing our CW operations, and and I appreciate him working out in the open there and knocking cues down there. Excuse me. So this is one of the things I brought to the party. So this is a 3 element beam up on a pneumatic tower up about, I don't remember, 35 feet up in the air or so. And it always looks impressive. The other neat thing that we have down at the base of it is a duplexer, excuse me, a triplexer. So that antenna can do 10 meters, 15 meters, and 20 meters. That duplexer down there has the same kind of profile where we can pick off and isolate 3 different bands there. So thereby we can have 3 different transmitters and receivers working on that simultaneously, each on their own separate band. We first tried this out at the 7QP event, and it worked very, very nice up there. Uh, Here we were in a little closer proximity, and we had a little bit more of interference. But I think part of the problem was I really needed to have that triplexer grounded, and I did not have a grounding rod in the ground to ground that darn thing. And I think that that would have helped with a little bit of the interference that we had there. But that's a nice picture of layout of you got Paul with his mansion that he towed in there behind at the very back end. We have Paul in the foreground there, and then Tyler right behind his RV there. So we had a lot of really nice operations there. I think everybody this year kind of notched things up, and a lot of their equipment, their accommodations worked a little bit better for everybody. But that also is a good showpiece in that people wandering around, they look up in the air and they see this nice tribander, and it kind of collects the community as far as coming in and wanting to talk to us to find out what we're doing and what we're all about. So there's Paul, our fearless leader, um, trying to undo knots and twisted stuff, but getting his antenna straightened up. That's a flagpole there, and that was offered up to us. If we wanted to break the nuts loose down the bottom, we could use that for raising up antennas up on the top of us. I did not take him up on it. After examining the bolt down at the bottom, I would have needed to get a torch in there to take and get the rust knocked off of it and get the bolt out of the thing. But I didn't quite feel like bringing out an oxyacetylene torch to take and knock that thing loose.
Mike, you could have just, got the 5 gallon bucket of WD-40 and just hosed it down all
Soaked,
weekend.
soaked it in that. Yep. Um, I have no idea what the vintage of how long that bolt had at the bottom of that thing's been setting in there. But then I would have needed to come along and a few other things to raise and lower that thing. But it definitely had. I was thinking about using that. So that's Paul. That's our guy with his tennis ball launcher. Actually, he uses I don't remember. Paul, what is it that you end up using there? It's not a golf ball, but something a little bigger.
It's a rubber dog ball that my wife was afraid the dogs would swallow it, but it turned about the right size for my launcher, so I stole it.
So it fit in there really nice. The only thing Paul doesn't have is a red dot sight on that thing, which I expect probably next year he'll have a nice big sight so he can do some precision shoots with that thing. So he does a very good job of getting stuff up in the air for us. So let's get into some of the details about the contest. So this is what it looked like for context. So this is kind of a summary sheet that shows down the left side the bands that we were on. Across the top it shows what mode we're in, and we have three modes that we care about: CW, phone, and digital. Digital is normally FT8 for this kind of an event. And then some totals, and then percentage of total cues that we got there. So as we can see, 40, 20, and 15 were our two bread and butter bands, with 20 meters, no surprise, being our top dog at 47% of all the cues. But we still did very nicely on 40 and 15. 15 is one of those that, unless if we don't have propagation, we really don't get much for a 15 on out there. But um, I think Ron Post was the one that probably knocked most of that down on 15. One of the things that we don't have with this piece of software is a nice breakdown by operator, by band, and by mode. So it doesn't break us down quite as far as what I would like to have, like what we get with the with other logging programs. So we did pick up a few up there on 80 meters. That's just some token work. 10 meters really didn't open up at all for us, but snagged a few contacts there. And also on 6 meters, snagged a contact there. So that gives you the pretty good breakdown. 20 meters was our bread and butter band. And phone on that band was the big money maker. Now we also noticed, like when we take a look at 40 and 15, digital FT8 was our two main modes there. So so yeah. So anyway, so those kind of surprising that they came up. So that's the neat thing about this contest. We also have a special mode on the N3FJP logging program that allows us to do FT8 and get that connection with our WSJT program that we can get all the logging information. So that was really cool to see. Okay, so 474 QSOs that we got there. So this is a breakdown by operator to see what's going on. And you can see Paul B was the top dog on that, getting 103 at 22%. And come on, Tyler, there we go. So Tyler came in second there as far as getting 84 at 18%. And then you can see the rest of the breakdown as far as everybody else that did good. So Rusty, it was sure good to see that you had some good outcomes there as far as the ones you got there. And then you can see also where GGN, that's Scott there. So working his CW, he got an awful lot of them. But I don't know, there's another guy in there also working some phone with you too. So I don't know how many of those contacts got worked in on that. So anyway, someone had something to note there. So anyway, so that's what we had for operators. That's what each one scored up on. So another interesting fact. So we also look at the number of sections. The ARL is divided up into section. Each state may have multiple sections in it. So out of our 48 states out there, we have 71 sections out of that. Actually, I guess it's 50. Yeah, out of the 50 states and territories, we have 50 sections. We also include the 15 Canadian provinces up there, which gives us a total of 86 total sections. So we ended up nailing 73 sections, which is, I think, probably either the highest or one of the highest counts that we have gotten so far. Quite good. So this is a real nice pictorial. I always like this one here. So this is a map of the U.S., Canada, Alaska, Hawaii, Puerto Rico. And you can see the only places we're really missing was that a couple provinces, 3 provinces in Canada. And it looks like parts of New York that we didn't get. And the top part, I think, of New Jersey out there. And boy, I'm trying to think of not Boston. Anyway, it's up there in that area that we didn't get. So we got pretty darn close to having a perfect map out there, and that's always really a big quest that we have is like a big a map that's completely filled in. It's kind of interesting that by the Saturday night, this map was not particularly well filled in. So a lot of that fill in happened on Sunday morning, is where we picked up a lot of other entities in there and got a better chance of filling in the rest of this map. So this was the final score here. CW had 48 for phone. We had 259 and digital 170. So this is a score. This is after applying the multipliers. So our total points that we got was 689 points out of that whole thing. So one of the things I wanted to do is have a little bit of a discussion about what we thought about field day and maybe thinking about some things that we might do that make things work a little bit better, and any thoughts about reusing Fireside. We've had a chance to use Fireside, and there's some good pluses. And we've also typically used Willamette Park, and we know we've used that for a number of years, and we know how we fit there. So I know one of the ththings that I can think of right away is that the Willamette Park, we can spread out better. Well, there's more room to spread out, and it's better to get further away from each other, which I kind of like. Um, we have good trees there at Willamette. The one thing that I really missed that I liked about Fireside was that shelter. We had big picnic tables. We had a big communal area where we could all get together and all enjoy ourselves there. And I thought that was a big plus. But I've already have Willamette Park, that area reserved for next year. So I have some time to take and change my mind if I want to take and move us over to Fireside. So this is something I want to throw out and don't expect. I like some comments, but it's not going to be probably until next meeting that we'll end up trying to make a decision on which way we want to go. Um, so a couple other things that of interest. This year was the first time on our Wi-Fi connection for doing all of our logging. This is the first year that I've brought 5 gigahertz into it. It's always been to the 2.4 gigahertz out there, 2.5 rather, that we've normally done all our logging on. But when I took a look and see who was connected to the 5 gigahertz, the vast majority of everybody must have newer PCs, newer equipment, rather than running old junkers for doing your logging. But most everybody was all connected to the 5 gigahertz network, which I thought was kind of interesting. And then also we are kind of spread out a little bit from where I kind of set up. I brought in mesh networking. So the guys clear out at the west end of things, they still had a 5 gigahertz connection that they could connect to and get that information relayed all the way back to the other end of the area where I had set up. Um, the other thing that I thought was really interesting is that Saturday morning, very unexpectedly, we expected some visitors, but we had a huge amount of visitors. We had more than what we needed. Unfortunately, when you first start one of these events up, you always have some wrinkles, some problems. And so it was a challenging dealing with all the visitors and then trying to get all our stuff working and getting into a rhythm on making our contacts. But um, it seemed like Field Day is also an outreach to our community, letting our community know what ham radio is about and helping the community to understand, to realize how important ham radio is within a community anytime that there's a disaster. So it's kind of nice for them to see how we work, how we can set up in a event of a disaster, and see all the wonderful places that we can get out and touch and communicate with. So those are kind of the things that I thought was kind of interesting in this whole thing. But I thought it was really cool the way we all worked together, got things up, got things connected, made things working. Next year, we want to work a little bit differently as far as priorities. We need to move getting our network up and going probably a little bit sooner than doing some other things. That might be one of the first things to get up, make sure everybody can get connected, make sure all the PCs are working before we end up doing a little more stuff as far as focusing on antennas. This time we worked on antennas first. The networking I thought would be a drop in the bucket, but that didn't turn out to be anything, or it turned out to be a kind of a problem. So anybody have any comments about thoughts about how good or bad or things we need to do differently on field day?
Mike, originally I was wondering about that fireside shelter because we were kind of crowded. But I think at the same time, I think we had a lot of people that we haven't had in the past that stopped by, not only hams, but just general people. And I think we got a few more of those there than we would have over at Willamette Park. And even with the trees being a little bit of a challenge for putting up antennas, I thought the site didn't work too bad.
I thought we adapted really well. And that's that's the key is that, well, it's different. We're all accustomed to how Willamette is and how we put things up there, but this was a brand new, and I thought we adapted quite well. Anybody else
Something
have?
I'll throw,
Go for it.
yeah, something I'll throw out there. At the fireside, the bathrooms are better. The other side, though, the Willamette Park, that is at least a POTA location. So Friday night, would have had that opportunity. But I also agree. I thought it worked out very well this year. The way we spaced out, um, I thought was pretty good.
Yep. Anybody else?
Hi, Mike. This is Scott here, KF7GGN.
Mhm.
I wasn't able to get in earlier with my video and sound, but I'm okay now. Yeah, I just want to say, I agree. I think the site was actually pretty good. In some ways, better than Willamette Park, and the pavilion I think was, a nice addition there too. And yes, we did get quite a bit more of the public. And some of the newer hams that came by to visit. And I was working with one in particular that, we made, I think roughly about 13 sideband contacts with my call sign. We forgot to add him in. So he didn't get his call sign. He didn't get credit for his particular call sign, but he did contribute to the overall scores. So that was a nice thing. And he really wanted to learn this stuff. So I devoted, I kind of separated my ego, contesting ego, from public service, and I decided to help and talk to people and work with hams like this particular guy. His name was Jens, by the way. I think his call sign is Cam7. Ooh, oh gosh, now I can't remember. I think it was Alpha Uniform Alpha, I believe. Anyway, he was really a gung ho, enthusiastic guy, so I couldn't turn him away. But yeah, I just think in general we had a really good experience, and maybe next year we could think about a public, either a go-to station type of thing / public relations to kind of like steer people toward a particular person who really just wants to deal with the public, and let the other operators just operate if they want to. But overall, yeah, I think it was a very good experience, and I wouldn't mind going back
Okay.
to Fireside.
Okay. Cool. Well, because Scott brings up a good point there is that, and I know I addressed it previously in email, is this is, AR Field Day is not about, I mean, some people make it all about the contest and the highest score. I feel that, Field Day is more for us getting connected with the public, the people we serve, the people we'll take and deal with in the if we ever have an emergency where we have to set up and support them. And we already have lots of services that we can talk about that we are involved with. So I'm always for on field day giving up on the score and staying focused with the public and trying to take in and help them out. Another thing I'll throw out there is um, uh, uh, our president there, Paul. Uh, for lunch there on Saturday, we were not prepared to feed a whole bunch of people, but we kind of said, what the heck? So I think our food bill is going to be a little bit larger than what it was maybe budgeted for, but we fed a whole ton of people and had to, and it sounded like Paul had to go back and pick up a little more food for dinner that night. But is that something that we might want to take and sponsor, or is that too much of a giveaway, or or any thoughts on how we should do that?
I I think the way to anybody's heart is through their stomach. So if it takes a hamburger or some chips or whatever to get that first hook into somebody to get them in the hobby, then I think that's a very good investment.
Money well spent.
It keeps them there so you can talk ham radio longer. So that's a good hook. Okay, anybody else with any thoughts? Observation? So anyway, next month I'd like to end up bringing up the thought about changing our reservation to Fireside, or at least bring it up for discussion and see if that's something that we want to do. But I want to thank everybody that participated this year. I thought we had a great bunch of people out there. And I know that next year people are going to have some other ideas about where to locate their equipment so they're more out of the sun and better into the shade. But I think overall it worked out pretty good as finding just enough shade to keep that sun from being pretty darn painful.
Yep.
So, yep. Anybody else? Final call?
So I think one thing to also consider is there is that Thompson shelter, the next one down, that actually has the bathrooms in the shelter, and there's considerably more trees in that area that are more manageable height and might be not so good for hanging antennas because they're short, but good for shade. So that might be another option to keep open for consideration.
So here's a thought. I'm not nixing this, but here's a thought. Both the two shelters on each side of us have playgrounds for kids. And some of the kids just wander in there unchaperoned and stuff like that. So I kind of looked at that as a safety concern with all of our equipment up and having some young kids wandering around. And so that had a little bit of concern in my view, but um, I'm still willing to give it a try.
Mike?
Yeah.
I'm here at Mennonite Village. We're in South Albany, and we have a very large pavilion and a wide open area of grass. The pavilion probably would seat 100 people. And if you'd like, I could check and see if that'd be available because Mennonite Village, as part of their vision is they want to be pouring out back into the community. We also have several hams here and a group that meets here in the village. So, and we also have an emergency radio set up that we're getting established between the different areas of the area. Campus is quite large. And so let me know if you want me to dig in a little deeper about
Okay.
that.
Okay, so one of the key things that I always fret over is structures to handle or that we can use for putting up antennas. So both Willamette and also what we have at Fireside has a very good selection of trees. And so that was, and not reasonably well spaced where we can use those things to support all of our wire antennas. So that was one thing that a nice clear cut grassy field is probably not something that we would want to elect to go to. So George, any comment there?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, I was asking you.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, let me know if I can take pictures of it or
Yeah,
whatever.
if you could take some pictures, pass it around, looks, send it on over to me, W7RIS,
Okay.
and you can look me up on QRZ, and I'll be glad to look at it. If it looks promising, I'll come over and take a survey of it.
Sounds good.
Okay, final call. Or otherwise, I'm done.
Mike, one last thing is the park people there seemed like they bent over backwards to us, and we gave them a card and we all signed it because they did an outstanding job for us.
So, I took that card and took it over to Parks and Rec. I met with a coordinator and told her that I had this card that I would appreciate if it gets shared around within the organization. The the main guy, the groundskeeper that I worked with to coordinated that, I met his boss. I talked to her and she says, nobody ever gives us a thank you card. And I laid it on them how much we appreciated everything that they did and how they worked with us and bent over backwards. And we're just not accustomed to having a government organization being so accommodating. And we really, really, really seriously appreciated that. So it was, first of all, they were taken back, but it was well received. And that card got passed around, I know, to a lot of different places and probably up on a pegboard somewhere for everybody to see and enjoy. So I appreciate everybody signing that card. Good thing. Anything else? Okay, back to net control. I do have a couple other little things that I'll talk about. I want to get this thing off of here. There we go. So I don't know if anybody has been out there trying to get on 20 meters. I mean, basically, if you're an HFer. So sorry about VHF guys, but this last weekend was your forte out there. So anybody who likes VHF and doing DXing and contesting, last weekend was your time your time for glory out there. But anyway, I've still been working really hard on doing on some other awards, and I still keep, I don't sit in this chair all day long listening to looking, trying to find DX. And most of the DX that I find, that I find it by accident. But last night I backed into Benin. That's a small African country on the west coast. I had worked all of those countries all around the west side and also the east side before, but this was one country I had not talked to, and I nailed that last night on 20 meters. And he just popped up for probably 5 minutes, uh, put out a couple CQs. I jumped on him. There was two more contacts after that, and he disappeared. Bangladesh was another one. That's on the opposite side of the world from us. So that's over the pole for getting that guy. I've actually had this spring, summer, I've actually had 3 contacts into Bangladesh. And Bangladesh, India, all of that stuff is a real hard one to get. Another a couple expeditions going on. So Kiribati, I keep picking that up and filling in as far as a bunch of different bands. I don't think I have them on 10 meters yet, but I have them on most all the other bands out there. Malta was another one that I picked up about 3 weeks ago, which is, you'd think being in the Mediterranean, it'd be easy to pick off, but there's just no hams in Malta. So that was a really hard one to end up getting. So it's really nice to pick that one off. So there's lots of stuff going on, and we're starting in on that waning side of the sun cycle. So we got probably a couple more years of decent propagation, but this is a good time to get involved if you like chasing DX, chasing different countries out there. It's a good time to get involved in it. So that's all I had to say there.
Hey, Mike, I've got one more question about the field day.
Sure.
How did it work out with the generators? Because we had some discussion about that a couple of months ago.
Generators work out just fine. Two couple things. Not all generators are made the same. Virtually everybody these days all use inverter generators, so they're much quieter. We also found out from 7QP, if you go through there and let's say you have an S7 noise level, that's obviously generator noise because you hear the click stuff going on. I bought 3 or 4 of these big, huge honking ferrite chokes. And you can go back to the generator, make sure it's grounded, take that cable that comes out of the generator, wrap it around this choke as many times as you possibly can. That'll get you about 2 extra S units knocked off of it. The other thing is, remember that that cord coming from that generator to your station, that's an antenna. It's radiating all that hash and RF. Do not take and place that cable next to your coax that's connected to your antenna. Keep the things way separated. You'll save yourself a lot of problems on that. So does that kind of answer your question?
Yes, thanks.
Okay, Anthony.
All right. Well, thank you, Mike.